Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. I'd like to welcome all members to the full council meeting on the 26th of October 2022, reminding all members that the meeting will be webcast live. And I would now like to invite Reverend Canon Darren Barlow to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 days ago on Sunday, the date was the 23rd of October. And I suspect for many both in Thurrock and beyond, Sunday the 23rd of October passed just like any other Sunday in the autumn. However, if we turn the clock back 3 years, then things were very different. The events unfolding in West Thurrock and Grays were the lead news story all around the world. Why? Because a lorry trailer had been found containing the 39 people from Vietnam. 31 men, 8 women, and including a 15-year-old child. They'd sought to enter the UK illegally through the actions of others who had been paid a great deal of money, to people who traffic human beings in a completely dangerous and inappropriate way. And this, as we know, had resulted in their death, both by heat and by suffocation, an absolutely appalling death. And in Vietnamese culture, the 3rd anniversary of a death is the most significant to mark and remember. And so it was my privilege and honour to be able to take part in a short, simple ceremony where we were able to stand alongside those who continue to grieve and to affirm our commitment to stand against modern-day slavery and human trafficking. This event was about doing the right thing, and it was right that members from across the chamber, officers, some of which are behind me and to my right, and leading figures in the local community came together. And as a reflection of how important an event this was, we were joined by the Chief Constable of Essex Police, other senior officers from the police, Essex Fire and Rescue, East of England Ambulance Service, and the Deputy Chief of Mission from the Vietnamese Embassy in London, plus the elected Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, Roger Hurst. And perhaps most importantly, the family members and friends of those who had lost their lives. And for those unable to join us, the event was videoed and would be watched by many back in Vietnam. I'd like to read the short statement of commitment that was read aloud by all those present on Sunday afternoon, and I hope that everyone present this evening will affirm these important words. The statement read, "In remembrance and testimony to those who tragically lost their lives at the hands of organised immigration crime, Thurrock stands united in its commitment to prevent modern-day slavery and human trafficking in all its forms, by providing support and protection for victims and prosecution of those who see our fellow human beings as being mere commodities for trade and exploitation." So a short prayer. Heavenly Father, we pray for women, children and men who have been tricked or coerced into slavery, suffering physical, emotional and sexual abuse. We know that nothing is hidden from you, and we cry out to you for justice, freedom and mercy. Lord, continue to equip and strengthen all police officers and other agencies that they would spot the signs of all kinds of trafficking. We thank you for all that Essex Police is doing to bring those responsible to justice. Amen.
Thank you very much, Reverend Barlow. Item 1, apologies for absence. I received apologies from Councillor Chukwu, Hebb, Redsell, Gledhill and Jeffreys. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Kent.
Councillor Muldowney.
Councillor Byrne.
Councillor Smith.
Item 3, items of urgent business. I have agreed to the consideration of one urgent item, which is the recruitment of the Interim Director of Legal and Governance. The report has been tabled this evening. Leader of the Council, would you please introduce the report?
pleased to introduce this report as an urgent item, as you see on your desks, to the Director of Legal and Governance. This is a permanent recruitment for this role was not feasible over the last few months of General Services Committee. And as this, however, this is a statutory role needs filling with an experience and ensure the priorities of our continue in this difficult time. General Services undertook an interview process last night with John Jones yesterday evening and unanimously recommended the appointment of him as Interim Director for Legal and Governance. John has an extensive experience in local government and a track record of being a monitor officer role. He has recently held the monitoring role and responsibilities in Castle Point, prior to that in Hackney and Havering. As outlined in the report, I ask him to agree the recommendations of 1.1 to appoint John Jones for an interim director of legal and governance. And at this time, I also would like to thank Matt completely and for his covering the statutory role in a great manner. And I think he's one of the best help he's been for over the last year or so for me. I must congratulate him very well. On an interim basis, and I also thank Mark Bowen as a head of legal duties during the same period.
Thank you, Leader. Leader of the Opposition?
No, happy to second that, Mr Mayor, and move to the vote.
Okay. Any other member wish to speak? Okay, I'll move to the recommendations outlined. Can I see a clear show of hands in favour, please? That's unanimous, thank you. Move on to the minutes from the Council meeting of the 13th of October 2022. These will be published on the November agenda because of the closeness of the two full councils. Item 4, declarations of interest. Do any members have declarations they wish to make? No. Item 5, announcements on behalf of the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. Given the fact we've only recently had a full council meeting, the only announcements I wish to make this evening draw members' attention to the updated mayoral roll of honour. Again, I won't walk members through everyone, but a few individuals who have been honoured this month who do stand out in my mind are 2 Thurrock residents who grew up in Moldova and Russia, and as Ukrainian refugees began to come to the borough, they simply turned up at the Chadwell hub to conduct translation services to help those mothers and their daughters and sons who were struggling to navigate certain council services such as admissions. To the volunteers looking after Grays Beach, and especially to Mike Ostler, who has done so much to keep the life and the heritage of Thurrock through the Historical Society so alive and well. And it's heartening to see that even after spending your entire 32 years in the borough, there are still items that you can learn about our rich and diverse heritage, including discovering that there was once a cinema in East Tilbury, which I know there's a great deal of enthusiasm behind turning into a modern-day community cinema, a visit I greatly enjoyed with Councillor Massey. And finally, I would like to thank Matt Bolter for his services as the interim monitoring officer. I'm sure all members will agree that certainly over my 13 years in the chamber, he has always been an officer who fully understands the role of elected members and respects robust scrutiny and debate. All very indebted to him and grateful he's still with us. Leader of the Council, would you like to make any announcements?
Yes, it's been only 2 weeks since that, but it seems to have lots gone on, so I'd like to update you of what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks. But thank you, Mr Mayor. It's been 2 weeks and I've been lucky enough to receive the support across this chamber to appoint me as the new leader of Thurrock Council. I promise to transform the culture between councillors, officers, media and the parties in this chamber. This change is big and meaningful and it's never going to be a quick fix, but I hope we've already seen some improvements, albeit some slip-ups in the time. I'd like to touch on the protesters actually on the QE2 bridge. People across Thurrock were stopped from going to work, taking the kids to school, because some self-important, two selfish individuals who put their worthy cause back by alienating the people of Thurrock. It did not only just affect the people residents here. It affected our businesses in the area and stopped our essential services in Thurrock, i.e. our suspension of our bin service. Not to mention the fantastic blue light services were severely hampered. Sadly, this may have left extra deaths. And moving on to the 6 actions I mentioned last week, 2 weeks ago, not last week, I'd like to update you on the progress of them actions I outlined at the last Cabinet meeting, Council meeting. I look forward to seeing you all as soon as possible at my Cabinet meeting on the 9th of November. Any member can now come, ask questions on any item on the agenda. None of these have to be tabled in advance. On top of this, I will be arranging a press briefing for any members of the press before the Cabinet meeting. We all need to do better with scrutiny, which is one of the reasons why I offered chairs and vice chairs to the opposition groups. It's a real shame the Labour group did not step up and take this chair, but the members are already playing an important part of the improvement plan. Councillor Kent is on the Finance Board and the Improvement Board with me, and I'm informing the Council of actions when this happens and when we can report back. I reaffirm the improvement plan will be coming to debate at the full Council. We are improving the access to dialogue with this Council with the staff and members. I also hope you all enjoy my weekly newsletters, and I find them useful at keeping you up to date. I want these actions to be seen as a marked and clear change from the past. I am a leader for all members of the Council and will make sure that priorities are informed properly and honesty. This is what I see as openness, transparency and honesty looks like to me. Finally, I'd like to make some changes about the culture and officers of the Council. At Cabinet 2 weeks ago, I announced complete transparency with executive decisions I have to make. I announced free school meals and business grants, and I promise this will continue at Cabinet whenever I make them. There were distinct changes to the senior leadership team, as you see with an emergency item here. I'll be proactively keeping the quality of the services and public services running. These restructures are an important part to keep our best officers in senior positions and change the correct culture. I also expect councillors to be completely fair and reasonable to the new officers in this heavy workload time. Building trust relationships does go 2 ways. In conclusion, those important steps have already been taken to improve the Council. As I said last time, I cannot change the past. I have very little power to influence the future. What I can do, and we all can hear, is decide how we act here and now. This journey it may be much easier if members across the chamber continue to work together and put governance before the point scoring. As always, I offer members to walk into my office for a coffee and a chat any time. Thank you for your continuing support.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the fallen war dead from World War II from October 1942. Fred Ambrose, Albert West, May Hyde, Arthur Crudgington, Albert Bond, Henry Wood, Patrick Finn, Edward Nichols. Move on to item 6, questions from members of the public. There have been no questions from the public received for this evening. Item 7, petitions from members of the Council. I would advise members that in accordance with the Council petition scheme, no notice of petitions have been received. Item 8, update report in respect to petitions already presented at the Council, which can be found on page 13 of your agenda pack. Item 9, appointment to committees, outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Leader of the Council, have you got any changes you'd like to make to your appointments?
Yes, I'd like to remove Councillor Rigby from Vice Chair of Corporate and appoint Councillor Tandy. I'd like to appoint Joy Redsall in replacement of Councillor Austin and in Housing, and I'd like to Councillor Rigby to return to Chair and Audits after we cannot leave that spare to the next meeting. I'm so disappointed, but I have to carry on that.
Thank you, Leader. Leader of the Opposition?
Sorry, can Councillor Cockrell clarify? Councillor Austin.
On an Anaji.
Sorry, I used the wrong name. Anaji, sorry.
Councillor Byrne, are there any changes you'd like to make? No. Councillor Massey? Councillor Allen? Thank you very much. Item 10, report on ethical standards, changes to the Constitution. Leader Leader of the Council, would you like to introduce the report? Ethical standards change to the Constitution. Item 10.
Sorry, I was talking away. I told you it's a long journey for a leader. I'm happy to bring forward this report and agree the recommendations and suggested of this the standards and activity. The recommendations were adopted from the LGA's Model Council Code of Conduct and Social Media Policy. Honestly, I think it's about time we all signed up to these in a robust way to judging members' conduct. We are working extensively hard to transform the culture of this council, and to be fair, all behaviour should be better. Everyone has a role to make that a better place for the borough. This report takes on board what the outside bodies consider to be a model contract, and I expect nothing less. That I hope all councillors feel the same.
Thank you, Leader. Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Mayor, these have all been through the Standards and Audit Committee, so I'm happy to second and suggest we move to the vote.
Does any other member wish to speak? Very well. Let's move the recommendations printed in general block. Can I please see a clear show of hands in favour of the recommendations? Unanimous, thank you. Item 11, questions from members. Question, maybe easier just for the leader to stay on his feet. Question 1, Councillor Worrell, could you please read your question to the Leader of the Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Leader, in your recent interview with BBC Essex, you stated that to deal with the level of debt our council is facing, nothing is off the table, including all of our assets. Can you expand on what you meant by this?
Leader, would you like to respond?
The council is considering a range of options to manage the impact of financial losses. Asset sales are ongoing discussions with the commissioners, and it's expected to be a wider capitalisation flexibility available to us as part of these options. Discussions remain at an early stage, and I promise to keep further details to be shared with members as soon as possible as I know them. What is needed is to close the gap and reduce the costs to make sure that all of us residents are covered at the maximum.
Councillor Worrell, would you like a supplementary?
Absolutely, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sure that you and the Cabinet Member for Housing would both accept that our 10,000 council homes are one of the most valuable assets that we have here in Thurrock. They bring an income of about 50 million a year to the HRA. Many other portfolios, benefit from the income from the HRA. Quick example, Seabrook Rise, all the new lighting came out of the HRA. So, lots of people do benefit from that. Can you give assurances and comfort to the 10,000 tenants living in our homes that their homes are not and will not be on the table as part of the asset sales to reduce the catastrophic debts that this council has now found itself in?
Leader of the Council.
I cannot at this stage, and that's to be honest, I cannot at this stage. As I say, everything is on the table, and the commissioners are assessing everything. We have to look through everything, and we will go through that process.
Councillor Worrell, would you like a second supplementary?
Thank you. I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. In all of the times of me being a councillor here, would I ever imagine that I thought I would have to even ask that question? They are probably our most treasured thing that we have here in Thurrock. And I thought it was Chinese whispers that I was hearing. I really, really did. So really, how will we know? I mean, is there going to be a list in the fire sale of we'd get rid of this before this, how far down the list, really, are those 10,000 houses, and how will you ensure in your openness and transparency which you promised. And I know that you're probably as sad as we are, but where we are, do you know, like, I wish the Cabinet members had just asked a few more questions about where our money was going, because it's why we've got here is because nobody went deep enough, and I'm so angry, and so are 10,000 residents going to be out there going to be angry, that they could end up with a housing association running our houses. I could cry for those residents, I really could. So how are you going to keep engaged and make sure that you dig us out of this mess that you've lot got us into, and you save our homes of our residents?
Councillor Coxhill.
Yeah, as I said, like, I could have answered that with a mealy-mouth answer. I'm not going to. I'm going to be open and transparent and honest, and I can't promise to take the 10 homes. That's more than 10,000. That's 10,000 homes. There's more people in that. I realise it could be 20, 30, 25,000 people's lives there. I take that responsibility every day and think about that. I do think that what we've got to go is go through every item in this council does and owns, and then discount them as we go through and what they have. I can promise you the item you said is a fire sale, there'll be no fire sales. There is no fire sales, there is no interest in that at all, there's no value to that at all. What this is a concerted effort to go through what this council does, line by line, and make sure where the value is and what we can do. And to minimise that is the number one priority.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kent, would you put your questions to the Leader of the Council?
Will the Leader of the Council give an update on the work of the Improvement and Recovery Board? Leader of the Council.
The work is ongoing to be ready for the first meeting on the 1st of November. As you know, Councillor, the Foundings Board has already met twice and will feed into the Improvement and Recovery Board, and at my request, yourself and myself both sit on both boards.
Councillor Kent, would you like a supplementary?
Mr Mayor, picking up on the Financial Recovery Board, can the Leader of the Council give an update on the potential impact of the Conservative financial catastrophe on next year's budget?
Leader of the Council.
Not at this time.
Councillor Kent.
Okay. In the interests of openness and transparency that we're hearing so much about, does the Leader of the Council believe that the Council can avoid issuing a Section 114 notice, in effect declaring bankruptcy?
Leader of the Council.
That's not my decision.
Councillor Kent, would you please put question 3 to the Leader of the Council?
Mr Mayor, will the Leader of the Council give an update on the ongoing review of Council assets?
Leader of the Council.
Yes, that's an ongoing concern. That is our decision. We can actually go through that line by line. It was instructed last week with the commissioners. The new Director of Police met the commissioners, and we're going through. We're producing already to go to Cabinet. There's a question later on, but when we're producing an asset list before we got to this stage, where we're going through and making sure there's a full list of assets, and that will be coming to Cabinet as soon as we can to have a look at, and then decisions will be made as we see fit. Some items shouldn't ever be sold, some items can be sold, some items are going to put the conversation in here to be sold. But that was always going to be, there's an asset sales value right the way through, as you see in my papers, through in the 3R process.
Councillor Kent, would you like a supplementary question?
Mr Mayor, the Leader of the Council said that that was always going to be. What clearly was not always going to be was a large-scale transfer of our housing stock to another community provider, to a housing association or something else. In the interest of those residents who are likely to suffer as a result of that, can the Leader of the Council give us a rough timetable for the decision-making on that, and tell us when he expects to be consulting tenants?
Leader of the Council.
I hope to have some sort of decision in front of me and yourself very shortly before it goes to the Secretary of State, and then before that before anything like that should be coming to this full council. What I can do on the disposal process at the moment, over the last year, we've generated £12 million in the last 18 months with 18 properties. A further 43 have been approved for sale, and negotiations are underway at this time, and there'll be more coming.
Councillor Kent, would you like a second supplementary?
Yeah. So, Mr Mayor, we're not sure what the timetable is. I'll just remind the Leader of the Council that I'm not the decision maker. Cabinet is the decision maker. But will he take this opportunity to apologise to those tenants that he was talking about earlier for the worry and concern that he will be causing them?
Leader of the Council.
I'm as worried and concerned as them.
Thank you, Leader. Questions to portfolio holders. Councillor Kent, would you please put your question to the Cabinet Member for Communities?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When does the portfolio holder expect the future of the Thameside to be resolved?
Councillor Bass, would you like to respond to the question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. This is not under my portfolio. Councillor Coxon is responsible for this, but if this councillor wishes to ask me this question, so I'm happy to answer. The paper will go to Overview and Scrutiny Committee in December and to full Cabinet in January 2023.
Councillor Kent, would you like to pose a supplementary?
Mr Mayor, it's quite clear when you read the list of portfolio responsibilities, it actually says the Thameside under Councillor Abbas. I think we all know that there are two interested parties in taking over the responsibility of the Thameside. We know that one is the Thurrock International Celebration of Culture, an organisation based here in Thurrock made up of voluntary bodies and local arts. Can the portfolio holder confirm that the second interesting body is the Waltham International College?
Councillor Bass, would you like to respond to the question?
Thank you. As I said, I'm not responsible for this process which is going through. There are two bidders and officers are going through the process. Thank you.
Councillor Kent, would you like a second supplementary?
So we notice again, Mr Mayor, that openness and transparency seems to have again disappeared. So I'll ask again, can the portfolio holder confirm that the second interested party is the Waltham International College? And if you can't answer that, perhaps you can answer this. When did Councillor Abbas stand down as a governor of the Waltham International College?
Councillor Bass, would you like to respond?
Yes, they are the bidders. Thank you.
Question 2. Councillor Kent, would you please put your question to the Cabinet Member for Communities?
Mr Mayor, there is much concern in Thurrock's voluntary sector at the portfolio holder's proposal to cut funding to the sector by 10% next year. Will he have a rethink and maintain funding to our voluntary sector at least the same level as this year?
Councillor Bass, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. All services are being asked to review budget to consider efficiency savings, including the budget that supports voluntary sector grants. Thurrock Council fully value the contribution of the voluntary sector to supporting communities in our borough. At this stage, I have not made any decision to cut funding, as we remain committed to explore all options to support voluntary sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bass. Councillor Kent, would you like a supplementary?
Mr Mayor, the Council wrote to voluntary sector leaders on the 5th of September 2022, setting out your intention to cut budgets by 10%. I think everybody's glad to hear that that's still under review. Can I ask when the portfolio holder intends to meet with representatives of the voluntary sector to discuss his proposal for a 10% cut?
Councillor Bass, would you like to respond?
I think I'm probably the first portfolio holder who has opened these offices for all these community groups, so they are more than welcome to come and speak to us. Before making any decision, we will consult all organisations involved.
Councillor Kent, would you like a second supplementary?
Mr Mayor, the voluntary sector in Thurrock does a tremendous job and in many ways can be part of the solution to get us out of the situation that we find ourselves in. Does the portfolio holder understand just how much damage to that sector and how much damage it will do to this authority if he continues with his proposal for a 7% cut to grants next year?
Councillor Bass, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your supplementary question. As I said, we haven't made any decision to cut funding at this stage. I'm taking every opportunity to help and support different community groups, faiths and voluntary sector organisations, and will not make any decision without consulting them.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 3. Councillor Worrell, would you like to put your question to the Cabinet Member for Housing, please?
Oh, sorry, I've got to read it, haven't I? What impact has the Council's financial crisis had on the housing revenue account and the housing general fund budgets?
Councillor Spillman, would you like to respond, please?
Well, major projects now have to be signed off, obviously, over a certain value. But in terms of the budget, I mean, I know the shadow portfolio holder knows that I've taken considerable steps to reduce our general fund expenditure. So that's a positive. But in terms of the HRA, while we fall under the investigation that's going on, we are not funded through the investments, as she knows. We're funded for our own rents, and we basically pay as you go. That is the nature of the HRA. We spend what we earn. But yeah, I mean, it's an extra layer of bureaucracy, but there's been no significant impact on my day-to-day. I've got much bigger concerns at the moment that I'm sure she would share if she was in my position, and when she was in my position she experienced something similar, and that would be that the level of that we've got a rent cap more than likely, which is going to be way below inflation, which is going to be significant. I mean, that's not finalised yet, but it's going to be, we've looked at the window and it's going to be a significant cut to the budget, which is very disappointing. And also the borrowing costs are of concern as well, obviously. Interest rates going up are of real concern because they make some projects problematic. Not beyond delivery entirely, but they just mean that a lot of projects we've now got to go back to the drawing board and look at how much they cost and look at how we can deliver them perhaps as an envelope rather than as individual projects. I hope that's a good answer for you.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Councillor Worrell, would you like a supplementary question, please?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I kind of feel like I've had the wind taken out of my sails tonight, you know, with the response that I had from Councillor Coxall. So I suppose I'd like to use my first question to you is, how do you feel hearing that, and that you're very possibly going to be the last housing portfolio holder of our council homes? You know, did you ever expect the day that, you know, we didn't have our amazing council homes, you know, and all of the work? £50 million a year, how can we miss that? And our residents, you know, how do you feel that this is where it's gone? You was part of that cabinet, Luke, and I know that, you know, you must be sitting there thinking, if only I'd have asked a few more questions. I just wonder how you know, feel about what a mess there is now that we could possibly lose our council homes. It will probably be my first question to you.
Councillor Spillman, would you like to respond?
I mean, Councillor Coxall's shown great candour to say that everything is on the table, but I would clarify that to say that whilst everything is on the table, there are no active discussions at selling HRA. He was just being absolutely honest with you that that is something that is potentially possible. But there are a lot of potential possibilities. But I've had no discussions with officers regarding selling council properties. I've had no discussions with commissioners about selling council properties. It's just Councillor Coxall wants to be absolutely honest at all times that, you know, that decision is a potential future. But I would like to reassure that that is not a future that is in discussion at the moment. And it's not anything that I've had any discussions with whatsoever. But again, I just think it's important that we wait until January to see exactly where we are. But the other thing about moving to a registered social landlord is that that would be a process that could take, you know, more than half a decade. Yeah, so it's not a short-term solution to our situation. Like, it's not something that's going to fix it, because it would take so many years for us to realise that it won't deal with the immediate concern we've got. So I would clarify that everything is on the table because we're in a very serious situation, but there are no active discussions about this whatsoever. So I think I would be careful about unduly worrying residents. Say that everything is on the table, but I have had not a single discussion with my director or a commissioner regarding the sale of HRA assets, other than, you know, perhaps land that we're not using. But no, I've not had any discussions regarding the sale of council homes. But, you know, we have to be realistic. And I think that, I think Councillor Kent, I know it's not in his nature to be unkind, but I think Councillor Kent was slightly unkind when he suggests that, you know, that we're not being open. I think that the leader of the council has been remarkably open since he took the role about what faces us, and I think that was another example of it. It's about being honest that everything is on the table, but that doesn't mean that we're selling all the council homes tomorrow. It's just, there's nothing, not a discussion that's being had.
Councillor Wall, would you like a second supplementary?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, well, I listened to, what brought it here is I listened to BBC Essex, and Councillor Coxall was clear that it was all assets, including our houses, were on the table. So that's why I brought this question here. You know, it was a very legitimate question for me to be asked and in this chamber here tonight. So I don't feel like you should say that I'm making something that's not there, Luke, because we shouldn't be even having this conversation, and you know that, you know. So all right, then I'll move away from the sale of the council houses. And so it's estimated that about 9,000 of our families here in Thurrock are living in fuel poverty. And many struggling to pay their rents, their council tax, can't turn their heating on. You know, private landlords will be ramping up their rent, so, you know, we're likely to see homeless applications go up. Changes to welfare reform, you know, phasing out the traditional benefits. Our partners are worried, the council officers are worried about that transition and what it does to incomes. And, you know, and every year we've talked about the use of the discretionary housing budget, you know, so, and I think that we're going to need this winter. I think you'll probably agree that we're going to need this more than ever this winter. You know, everything's higher. But this fund's been slashed by 30% this year. So how do you mitigate the impact and the hardship that this huge reduction is going to have on our residents?
Councillor Spillwell, would you like to respond?
I mean, as a day job, part of my day job is to go out and identify people that are in need of housing support funds.
That's not here.
So, no, I'm just saying, so I do fully understand what's going on. I mean, we've got a good welfare team within housing that provide a lot of support to residents, that include income maximisation, that include helping people with budgets, dealing with debts and stuff like that. There's a lot of support coming from government as well, with gas, electricity, those sorts of things. I think that we need to make sure as councillors that we make sure that our residents are aware that they can claim these grants, because a lot of people don't know about it. Most of the people I visit don't know about it, and when you tell them about it, it's a godsend to them, to put it mildly. So I think the main thing is encouraging uptake, and there are traditionally underspends on that budget as well. So it's all about encouraging uptake, and encouraging using the money that we've got through the Housing Support Fund, through the government, and I think really if the crisis continues, it probably won't be beyond the realms of possibility that we see more government funding. But in terms of another concern that she raised, but general stress on homelessness, I think that one of the things that we did do is we built, because of the threat of an increase of homelessness, we built a huge amount of extra capacity within our homelessness services. So we do have, you know, there's a current spike at the moment of about 40% in temporary accommodation, but a lot of that is probably the bottleneck that comes through the courts opening up again. So I'd personally be hopeful that that trend decreases, and then even if we see an uptrend in problems caused by private right to buy market and private lets, I'm confident that because of the extra capacity we've built, that we will be able to manage any sort of extra homelessness demand. And I think that's one of the things that council should be most proud about recent years, what we've done regarding homelessness. Yeah, it's my baby, yeah. And, yeah, I mean, the main thing is to reiterate, make sure that you're aware of everything that your tenants can claim, and make sure they're aware of it. And if you have any problems with applications getting through the system, then please contact me, because I know these benefits inside out, and I'll do everything I can to smooth that process.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Question 4, Councillor Shinnick, would you put your question to Councillor Coxhill?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Coxhill, can you please inform me if any measures are being taken to make sure the past mayors' names can be highlighted on the stone plaques in the council chambers so we are able to read their names?
Councillor Coxhill.
The stone plaques have been relocated from the old chamber. We're looking at what we can do to improve them.
Councillor Shinnick, supplementary.
Thank you. Another question is, regards to stone plaques, can you inform me when the Freedom of the Borough names are going to be put up in the chamber?
Councillor Coxhill.
As soon as possible.
Councillor Shinnick, would you like a second supplementary?
No, that's right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor 5, question 5, beg your pardon. Councillor Byrne, would you please put your question to Councillor Coxhill?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can you tell the Chamber the current state of play with our Stamford Station, please?
Councillor Coxhill, would you please respond to Councillor Byrne?
Gladly. In September 21, Thurrock Borough Council issued a tenders for contractors, the detailed design and construction of Stamford Legal Station. In March 22, the contractor was awarded on the basis of a tender within the budget and compliant, but concerns were raised over the liabilities and issues and concerns over the scope and definitions and approval and risks of inflation. Allocating the risks of national procurement led to a time delay following the pandemic. Issues prevented a fixed price contract being signed, but a letter of intent was issued to migrate the delays and enable activity to occur to resolve the issues. In September this year, the Council offered a way forward to execute the contract and mitigate the risk of the tender being void.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhill. Councillor Byrne, would you like a supplementary question?
Yes, please. It didn't start in 21, did it? December 2017, we had a trumpet-blowing press release. Station plans debated on February 18th, 2018. Brewery site owner offers the land opposite for 800k. June 19th, work halted on this new station. 3 years ago this month, a temporary ticket office opened. November 19, Council admits it needs more land because of a botched development plan. We paid £3.5 million for a site that was offered at £800,000 3 years before. 220, we were told we were going to resume on the car park, on the station. November now, 22, still no station. 5 years on, surely the residents and commuters deserve another apology from you on behalf of the ex-leader for this catalogue of errors that he allowed to happen under his watch. It's been 5 years this month.
Councillor Byrne. Councillor Coxhill, would you please respond?
Yes.
Was that an apology? Yes.
Councillor Byrne, would you like a second supplementary question, sir?
Does yes mean an apology? Yes, 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 yes. So you failed to deliver on Stamford Station, the brewery site, the A13, little things like the Wolf Road underpass. A simple little task like a grass-covered drain hole has taken me and Councillor Ralph 6 emails, daily photos sent from residents and 3 attempts to repair it. Why we constantly fail to deliver on projects we start? It's not the first time I've asked this question. Why are we so shockingly poor at project management? We don't finish anything.
Councillor Coxhill, would you please respond?
I can't answer why we are so shockingly poor. I can say we are shockingly poor on project management. We can say continuously we are. What I can say is we have a new assistant director in regeneration. We have a new director. We've brought back only in the last couple of weeks the new director of place to bring back that under one directorate to make sure that we actually move forward. And we've got a new assistant director who's actually determined to keep project management on time. And the phase devastation, break it into 2 phases, and the indecisions about what we do with that can't continue. And that's why I'm hoping we can get to a resolution on phase 1, and we've got to get to a resolution on phase 2 for the LEP in the early part of next year, Q1.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. Question 6. Councillor Watson, would you please put your question to the Cabinet Member for Transport?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can the portfolio holder for transport please tell me what Thurrock Council is doing to mitigate the ongoing issues around Purfleet Academy for parking in Flint Street, Schoolfield and London Road during drop-off and park-up time? Mr Mayor, there's a typo in the agenda. It's meant to be West Thurrock Academy, not Purfleet. Thank you.
Sure, we can correct that for the minutes. Councillor Maney, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Watson, for your question. I'm pleased you clarified the school you're talking about, because I was a bit concerned I was going to give you an answer that didn't pertain to your question, but you've clarified that for me. Mr Mayor, I think the starting point for me, whenever I'm answering a question on school parking and traffic congestion around schools, the starting point, I think, is always we have to remind ourselves it isn't the council's fault that these problems occur. It is human behaviour, and with the best will in the world, the council can implement parking restrictions, we can enforce them to the best of our ability, we can look at school travel plans, but unless parents change their habits, you know, I feel we're always going to be talking about this problem. So I think it's important to remember that there's only so much the council can do. This is a common problem around schools, not just across Thurrock, but it's a national problem. That doesn't mean it's okay, and it doesn't mean that there aren't things we can do. I'm happy to talk about West Thurrock Academy. So if we take the roads that you've referred to, London Road and Flint Street, first of all, the problem that the council has at present is there's very few on-street parking restrictions. There's a very good reason for that. If we were to implement them, they would apply to residents equally, and as you all know, those properties there have precious little off-street parking. So we can look, we will look at whether there's a need to implement a parking scheme, but it has to be borne in mind that will affect residents. Schoolfield Road does have, as you know, no parking anytime restrictions at various junctions. We do patrol them, and as ever we will enforce and issue penalty charge notices where there are violations. At present, the council is engaging with the school. It's been a hard task, I have to say, but the council has now managed to establish some communication. We are working on a school travel plan, and I very much hope that some of the issues that you've highlighted can be addressed in that. And the third thing I think is worth mentioning is that when the school was given planning consent, there was an obligation, or there are 2 parking facilities. One is a pick-up and drop-off zone for parents. I understand that is currently been closed by the school, and I've asked officers to look into potential enforcement proceedings, not only in respect of this school, but other schools across the borough, which I know have taken similar measures in respect of their obligations. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Councillor Watson, would you like a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney, for the positive news. Specifically why I'm choosing that school anyway is the level of arguments that is currently taking place on that school, into the point that the actual school itself is trying to mitigate some of those arguments, and it's coming into a quite confrontational and quite violent in some forms or other, especially down Flint Street, where the residents can't even get out of their doors or go in at all. Is there anything at all that you can do, and any sort of enforcement to try and help to stop some of that that's currently happening on a day-in, day-out basis? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Maney, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm all too aware of that kind of conflict. My own ward is greatly affected by these kind of problems, and I know the friction it causes. I know it can lead to real confrontation, and it goes back to what I say, that more parents driving their children to school need to be more considerate. I said in my answer that in Flint Street there are very few on-street parking restrictions, so in terms of enforcement the council has very limited options. So in answer to your question, there probably isn't much more we can do, because we have to have something to enforce. As I said, happy to review the situation. We constantly look at parking situations around schools, and if it's found, if a case is made that we should look at implementing more parking restrictions, we can. But I do need to reiterate that that would apply to residents also, and that hasn't been popular in some locations. So if you're asking, can we review the restrictions or lack of restrictions and come up with a scheme, I'm happy to take that away and speak to officers and engage a view on it, but it won't be an easy process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Councillor Watson, would you like a second up? No? Thank you. Question 7. Councillor Watson, would you please put your question to Councillor Coxhill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a cross-party shared ambition for the regeneration plan for Purfleet-on-Thames. Can the portfolio holder from Growth tell me what is the likely impact to those plans in light of the financial crisis we're facing?
Councillor Coxhill.
The regeneration of Purfleet-on-Thames remains an absolute priority. The global uncertainty and our financial challenges will not make this easy to deliver, but I'm working with the new Director of Place to look at how we can bring this forward at speed. I will share the financial position and the delivery options as they become clearer in the coming weeks and months. Be assured the local councillors will be the first to know.
Councillor Watson, would you like a supplementary question?
Thank you. The Development Corporation, if you remember rightly, was bought land, and they bought a significant amount of land that is now in Purfleet-on-Thames to carry out the regeneration for Purfleet-on-Thames. There is an agreement in place that those parcels of land will be released to that development because they're currently in the ownership of the council. Will that development agreement be honoured, and will those parcels of land will be released as the scheme carries forward?
Councillor Coxhill.
At this time, there is no intention to not stop the regeneration of Purfleet-on-Thames. There will be, so obviously in the financial position of what's happening in Purfleet-on-Thames, not regardless of our financial position, but what happens in Purfleet-on-Thames. We've got to make sure in this global economic crisis that they're coming, to make sure we deliver a regeneration of Purfleet-on-Thames.
Councillor Coxhill. Councillor Watson. No. Question 8. Councillor Muldoon? Oh, Councillor Muldoon is not here, so question 8 falls. I believe that takes us to the end of question time. Item 12, reports from members representing the council and outside bodies. Do any members have a report to make? No. Item 13, minutes of committees. They are listed in the agenda contents page. Item 14, motions update reports. Updates to motions will be provided at the November council meeting. Item 15, motions. Motion 1, Councillor Polly, would you like to propose and then speak to your motion as printed on page 113 of the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to speak to my motion. The motion is the council resolves to work with the government to ensure that it delivers the much appreciated support to the residents of Thurrock as quickly as possible, and that the council proactively identifies the most in need of support in the Thurrock area. As we have heard from Councillor Worrell, Councillor Kent, our third sector in Thurrock is amazing, 100%. I'm privileged enough to be part of the Trussell Trust and work with food banks. Networks such as these, the Citizens Advice Bureau, we need to be looking at those voluntary sectors to identify where the most need is for this support. I've heard from Councillor Spillman about the amazing work that the LACs do and the knowledge on the benefits and that systems, that their initiatives such as Thames Water with their social tariff 50% discounts to families with income of 20,000, it's something that it isn't advertised. They obviously don't want people to know about it if they can avoid it. So when we talk about fuel poverty, it's very unemotive. It's a phrase. We're looking to see by the end of January 23 a possibility of 18 million homes in fuel poverty.
that is likely to increase winter deaths by 10%. This isn't just numbers, this is people. This is a cost to the NHS of 2.5 billion linked directly to cold and dangerous homes. We see increased pressures put on our emergency services through the fire and rescue because of people lighting homes or faulty electrical equipment. I think the council, as Councillor Coxall has said earlier in his address about continuing with the school meal payments for children when they're not in school, I would really want this council to make as much I'd like this council to work with the government as much as possible to ensure that the maximum amount of relief is distributed to our residents. We've heard in previous councils about schemes for businesses during COVID that, for whatever reason, didn't get out to the people that probably were most in need. And we don't want to be repeating mistakes. We're at a time where we are reflecting, revisiting and refreshing. And I think this, at the moment, is something that, with all the other concerns and challenges that the council has in front of it, we still need to be making sure that our residents are looked after. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Polly. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Mays, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Reserve, please.
Thank you. Would any other member wish to debate? Councillor Spillman?
Yeah, I think it's a very worthy motion, obviously, one that we... I can't imagine anyone objecting to this. I mean, and part of the... And I know it's something that Ian is really keen on, is about getting more integrated frontline services across local government. We spend too much time making multiple visits to people's homes, and each person diagnoses one thing, when one person should be able to diagnose 4 things and get the help in sooner rather than later. It's just simple, you know, preventative council work. And I mean, one of the things that I'll be doing, which Councillor Bolliver will appreciate, is we're doing a review of housing services next month, and we're going to see where we can integrate our services more effectively into some of the health and social care functions. Because that is not, it doesn't just save money, but it's just more effective. And if you deal with these problems early, I mean, I heard someone on the radio earlier about how, you know, most cancers are caught at late stage, and the panacea is to find them at stage 1, because you can cure them then. It's the same for a whole raft of social ills. And so, yeah, I couldn't support this motion any more wholeheartedly than I do, and I welcome it.
Oh, forgot I had that button. Councillor Kent.
Mr. Mayor, of course, we will support this motion. I'm just surprised that a Conservative member puts this motion forward. You know, we've had a Conservative government for 12 years, and in that 12 years, we've seen the biggest drop in take-home pay in history. We've seen food and fuel prices soaring. We've got inflation at a 40-year high. We've got family budgets that are at breaking point. We've got people skipping meals so they can pay their bills. As Councillor Polly has said, nationally, we've got 18 million homes in fuel poverty, which could lead to 10,000 excess winter deaths this winter at a time when the NHS is facing unprecedented pressures. Nationally, the Conservatives have crashed the economy, and locally, we know that we're having to deal with a Conservative financial catastrophe that hits this council, which really limits the type of things that the council could and should be doing. It would be really good if the council had the financial clout now to make some one-off grants to Thurrock's voluntary bodies, to food banks, to people like Friends of Essex and London Homeless who are doing a fantastic job week in, week out, feeding the hungry. Feeding the hungry in Thurrock in the 21st century and having to rely on charities and volunteers to do it. We could be providing real help to families by helping with school uniform grants so kids have got the clothes they need to go to school. We could be establishing our own Thurrock hardship fund for people to come and ask when they actually need help. We can't do any of that because of the situation that you lot have landed us in. So yes, we will be supporting this motion, but let's not forget who's to blame for the state that we found ourselves in.
Any other member? Councillor Mays, Councillor Byrne?
Yes, just 100% agree with the councillor. When I read this, I thought, is she still in the Conservatives? It's, yes. The question, you just don't expect it. It's a shock, isn't it? It's not fun, and we're all laughing, but I think, are you still Conservative? Oh, good.
Councillor Mays, you've reserved your right. Would you wish to speak now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think compassion is just for the Labour Party. I think we all have compassion for people that deserve help. So, for me, reading a recent report from the Office of National Statistics that said that almost half of UK adults are finding it difficult to afford their energy bills, rent, mortgages, and others, that is absolutely shocking. And it'll be worse in areas such as my ward in Tilbury, and I'm sure you'll all have issues within your own wards. The worrying thing is as well, disabled people are twice as likely to actually be behind on their bills. So, although I'm very grateful for the government's cost of living payment of £650, the payment toward the fuel bill of £400, and the capping of the energy cost for the average home at £2,500, and a disability cost of living payment of £150, as well as the council tax rebate of £150. I think that is a lot of support. Arguably, I would like that to be more targeted in the future because there's a lot more people that need help. And although I'm grateful for this help, moving forward, support should be given to those in a targeted way for those that need it the most. This is a right and fair thing to do, and we must act as quickly as possible for people who are struggling, so I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mays. Councillor Polly, would you like to sum up?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As ourselves are in a change of leadership, so is the party nationally, we've just seen the recent Chancellor change the 2-year cap to a 1-year cap for review. Because when your top 10% only spend 10% on their heating bill, but your poorest 10% are spending double that of their income on it, why does one size fit all? Why should I get £150 and the person next to me who is perhaps on a third of my income get the same payment? So I welcome what the Chancellor's done in that it has recognised that it wasn't the best laid out plan and that we're not frightened to put our hands up and say, no, we wouldn't want to be in this position nationally or locally, but we are where we are, and what we need to do is find ways that we can start moving forward. And I think the help that, as Councillor Mays has just mentioned, from the government is something that although we would like to do more as a council, we need to make sure that all the help that is coming from government, and it happens to be a Conservative government at the moment, it is disseminated out to our residents, because I think we've all been in that situation. I certainly know that the majority of the community councillors here have got ward work and that, and I will say it again, with the help of the local area coordinators, I've been amazed that we've had thanks from residents, because they just, when you're overwhelmed with financial problems, housing problems, you get into a mind fog, and you just need somebody to come in and disseminate some of that put it and make you a little path. And I think, you know, that is something, there's a lot of things the council can't do at the moment, but this is something we can do, and I think we should get behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Polly. Can I please see a clear show of hands in favour of the motion? It's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. The motion is carried. That brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. All members and officers are, in course, invited back to the parlour for refreshments. Thank you very much.